All right, let's dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. This one really resonated with you guys, so we're going to unpack its themes and those moments that just stick with you long after you finish the book.
It's more than just a coming-of-age story. I mean, yeah, it's got that, but it's set during such a racially charged time in the American South.
You're talking about the 1930s, right? And Lee doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, but she does it through Scout's eyes. Like, we're experiencing everything right alongside her. How do you think that shakes our understanding of the prejudice that's kind of simmering beneath the
Well,
surface?
think about it. Kids are naturally curious, right? They don't have all the biases adults do. They ask questions, they observe.
So we're seeing Maycomb's reality through a lens that's not yet fully tainted by those social norms.
Exactly. And that makes it all the more powerful when those prejudices do start to surface.
It's like when they're fascinated by Boo Radley, this whole mysterious figure. Adults are afraid of him, but Scout and Jem, they're just intrigued.
Yeah, all those rumors, the whispers, it's almost like the adults have already decided who he is without even knowing him.
Which kind of ties into that whole judging people based on appearances theme, right?
Big time. Scout and Jem, they're not buying into it. Their interactions with Boo, even if they're from a distance, they start to chip away at that image.
And it's like they sense there's more to him than the stories.
Right, like those gifts in the tree, it suggests a kindness, a watchful presence, someone looking out for them, maybe even challenging those preconceived notions the town has.
And it's not just Boo Radley. Mrs. Dubose, remember her? The mean old lady Jem has to read to as punishment.
Oh yeah, the one who's always yelling from her porch.
Exactly. But Atticus reveals she's fighting a morphine addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy stuff, especially for that time period. Why do you think Lee included that?
It's like she's saying, look, there's always more to the story. We judge Mrs. Dubose based on her harsh exterior.
Right, but underneath, there's this whole battle going on.
A battle she's fighting with incredibly courage, even if no one else sees it. So, Lee's challenging us to look deeper, to understand there are reasons behind people's actions.
Okay, that makes sense. She's pushing us to have empathy, even for those who seem unlikable.
Exactly.
And speaking of unlikable, let's talk about the Mad Dog. Seems like a small event, but it's so symbolic. Suddenly, Atticus, this quiet, reserved lawyer, he's one-shot Finch.
Don't underestimate that scene. The mad dog, it's like a metaphor. Think unchecked rage, the potential for harm.
Hmm, so it's more than just a rabid animal.
Think bigger. Like the prejudice that's threatening to tear Maycomb apart,
And Atticus taking down that dog. He's stepping up, eliminating a threat.
and maybe hinting that he's willing to do the same when it comes to those other threats, those more insidious dangers lurking beneath the surface.
So we've got the Mad Dog incident, we've got Boo Radley, we've got Mrs. DuBose, all these instances where Lee is urging us to look past surface appearances. But it's Atticus's decision to defend Tom Robinson where things really get complicated.
Absolutely. He knows he's going up against the deeply ingrained prejudices of his community.
And he can't possibly win, but he does it anyway.
Because it's about more than winning or losing. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. It's about conscience. And that's the kind of courage that really defines Atticus.
And that takes us right into the heart of the trial. We know it's coming. But before we get there, I want to circle back to the church scene with Calpurnia. Why do you think Lee included that glimpse into Maycomb's black community?
It's such a stark contrast. We see warmth, community, genuine support. They're rallying around Tom, his family. It highlights the division in Maycomb.
It's like two different worlds existing side by side.
And it makes the injustice Tom faces even more glaring.
And then there's Aunt Alexandra arriving right before the trial. She's all about social status, tradition. How does she fit into this puzzle?
And Alexandra, she represents that part of Maycomb that clings to appearances, the established order, the proper way of doing things, even if those ways are inherently unjust.
It's that hypocrisy you were talking about earlier, and that ties into the killing a mockingbird idea, right?
Exactly. Tom Robinson, he's innocent, harmless. Like those mockingbirds, Atticus tells Scout and Jem not to shoot.
Because they don't do any harm, they just sing their hearts out.
Exactly. And persecuting someone like Tom, it's like destroying something pure, something beautiful, for no good reason.
So we have this town on edge, a trial that's about to expose all those hidden tensions. And Atticus, standing right in the middle, ready to fight a battle he knows he can't win.
But it's a battle that needs to be fought, even if it's just to show Scout, Jem, and maybe all of Maycomb what true courage looks like.
We're back, and yeah, things are about to get intense as we head into the courtroom. What really got to you when you were reading the trial?
The way Lee builds the tension, it's palpable, like
Mhm.
you're sitting right there with Scout and Jem.
You're right there in the thick of it. But it's not just about the legal drama, right? There's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. The trial, it becomes this stage where Maycomb's social hierarchy is put on display. And with each witness, each testimony, another layer of hypocrisy gets peeled back.
Okay, break that down for me. What do you mean by layers of hypocrisy?
Well, look at the Ewells. Bob Ewell, he's the accuser,
Yeah.
right? And Lee doesn't hold back in her portrayal of him. He's this embodiment of ignorance and poverty.
He's crude, he's hateful, he's...
Despicable. Yet his word is taken as truth simply because he's a white man.
Even though he's clearly unreliable, it really shows you how power operates in this society.
And it's not just Bob. Think about Mayella, his daughter. She's trapped, caught in a cycle of abuse and poverty.
So in a way, she's also a victim.
Absolutely. But she's also complicit in the lie, driven by this desperate need to escape her circumstances.
So it's more complicated than just good versus evil.
Way more complicated.
Yeah.
And then we have Atticus stuck in the middle of this mess. He's a product of Maycomb, but he's also trying to fight against its inherent injustices.
It's like he embodies that internal struggle, right?
Totally. He's upholding justice in a system that's designed to deny it, especially to someone like Tom. He knows he can't win, but his conscience won't let him stand by and do nothing.
It's about doing what's right, regardless of the consequences.
Exactly.
And you see that throughout the trial. He picks apart the Ewells' testimony, lays bare their lies and motivations. But in the end, it doesn't matter. The jury delivers a guilty verdict.
It's a crushing blow, not just to Tom, but to anyone who believed in justice.
It shattered Jem's faith in the system. You can see it.
It exposed the ugly truth that sometimes prejudice trumps truth, no matter how strong your case is.
Right. The jury's decision wasn't based on facts. It was driven by their own biases.
By a deeply ingrained belief system that tells them a black man can't be innocent when accused by a white person.
So it's a loss for Tom, a loss for Atticus, a loss for justice itself. And this is where the Mockingbird metaphor really comes into focus, right?
Absolutely. Remember Atticus's warning to Scout and Jem?
It's a sin to kill a mockingbird.
Because mockingbirds don't do anything but sing beautiful songs. They're innocent, harmless.
And Tom Robinson, he's the ultimate mockingbird in this story.
He's destroyed by a system that refuses to see his innocence, that punishes him for a crime he didn't commit.
It's heartbreaking.
And tragically, it doesn't end there. Tom tries to escape prison.
And he's shot dead. It's like a punch in the gut.
It's brutal. And the way the town reacts, dismissing his death as just another Negro getting what he deserved.
It's dehumanizing.
It just underscores the deeply embedded racism that permeates Maycomb. And what's even more disturbing is the indifference.
The casual acceptance of this injustice by people who consider themselves good.
The hypocrisy is staggering. Like Miss Gates, Scout's teacher.
The one who condemns Hitler's treatment of Jews.
The same one, yet she can't see the parallels in her own community. The prejudice against black people right there in her own backyard.
It highlights how insidious prejudice can be, how it can blind even those who think they're on the right side of history.
And then, lurking in the shadows, we have Bob Ewell. He's consumed by rage and vengeance, unable to accept any responsibility for what's happened.
He lashes out at everyone, Atticus, Judge Taylor, even Helen Robinson, Tom's widow.
Ewell is a danger, a ticking time bomb. And his actions lead us directly to the climax of the story, the attack on Scout and Jem.
That Halloween night where everything changes, the innocence of childhood is shattered.
And from the darkness, a protector emerges.
Boo Radley.
The one they all feared, the one they whispered about. He becomes the unexpected hero.
Saving the children from a fate worse than death. But what does it all mean? What's Lee trying to say with this twist? We'll get into that and more when we come back.
Okay, so we're back, and things got pretty intense there at the end of part 2, right? That attack on Scout and Jem, it's like their world is completely upended.
And just when things seem hopeless, Boo Radley steps in.
Not the monster everyone thought he was.
No, not at all. He's the protector, the one who saves them. It's almost like Lee is turning everything on its head, you know? It's like she's saying, hey, remember all that judging you were doing? Look who the real monster is.
Exactly. The people who seem so respectable, so upright, they're the ones who perpetuate injustice.
And Boo, the one they feared, the one they ostracized, he's the one with true courage, true compassion.
It makes you rethink everything you thought you knew, right?
It does, and it makes you wonder, what if more people in Maycomb had tried to see the world through Boo's eyes?
Ah, there's the question, isn't it? What if they'd taken the time to understand him, to understand Tom Robinson?
Instead of just dismissing them based on fear or prejudice?
That's the real tragedy here. It's not just the individual injustices, it's the collective failure of empathy.
A whole town that refuses to see beyond its own biases.
And that's a powerful message, right?
Yeah.
It's not enough to just not be racist yourself
You have to actively fight against racism.
and against all forms of prejudice and injustice.
Okay, but how do we do that? How do we create a world where mockingbirds are protected, where everyone is treated with dignity and respect?
Well, it's not easy. But Lee shows us that it starts with empathy, with trying to see the world from other people's perspectives.
Like Scout does when she walks Boo home. She finally sees him not as a monster, but as a human being.
A human being who has suffered, who has shown incredible kindness, despite being treated so poorly.
And it's that understanding, that connection that can make all the difference. So what does all of this mean for us here and now? What can we take away from To Kill a Mockingbird that we can apply to our own lives?
I think Lee is challenging us to look for those mockingbirds in our own communities. The people who are marginalized, misunderstood, silenced,
The ones who need someone to stand up for them, to speak out against injustice.
and to do it with courage and compassion, just like Atticus Finch. So the next time you see someone being treated unfairly, remember Scout, remember Jem, remember Boo Radley, remember what they went through.
And ask yourself, what would Atticus do? Would he stay silent? Or would he fight for what's right, even if it means going against the crowd?
Because in the end, that's what matters. It's about having the courage to stand up for what you believe in.
To be a voice for the voiceless, and to make the world a little bit better, a little bit kinder, one act of empathy at a time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird. Keep those conversations going. Keep challenging yourselves. Keep questioning. And let's all work together to build a world where those mockingbirds can sing freely.